Hey, this is Yazaki Wolf, and today I'd like to start my new um, video blog vlog series, as it were. This is going to be continuing off of the Japan Quest series that I did. So right now I'm tentatively calling this Japan Quest 9, but I'd like to actually change the name. So if anyone has any ideas of what I should call this little shindig, go ahead and let me know in the comments or whatnot, and I'll try to think on my free time as well as what I can call it. But so here, basically, as some of you may have noticed, I haven't made a video in a very, very, very long time, almost like half a year, I think. And the basic reason for that is that I've been extremely busy with my work as a game designer. And we released my first, well, the first game that I designed within my company. We released our first board game, and we debuted that in America at Gen Con. And we're just now getting ready to release the digital version of that game in Japan, probably by the end of this year or early January next year. So I've been having like 12, 13-hour days of work, like getting all that ready, and it's just basically at the end of a long day of work and whatnot. It's kind of hard to come home and be like, okay, now I'm gonna spend like another few hours like recording and editing video and things like that. So I was taking a long time just trying to figure out what the best way to be able to continue this series would be, because I didn't want to just like start up one day and then spend another like 3 months without putting up another video and just keep doing that pattern over and over again. So I wanted to try to make it something I could do continuously and regularly. Seems like this is kind of lagging a little bit with my drawing right now. But so anyways, I kept thinking about what I would be able to do, and the sort of result that I ended up coming to at the end, or the conclusion rather that I came to, is that the best way to do it would be to take a couple minutes, like 30 minutes to an hour every weekend during the time that I'm already spending working on my own drawings, my own personal stuff that's unrelated to work, just my own personal drawings and things like that, which is something I was doing anyways, and I figured I could just live stream that, and then people can kind of join in with that, and we could talk about whatever topics come up. The basic topic for this video is going to be this is a thing. This is the series I'm doing, and if you have any ideas for the future, like please feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll try to think of other topics to do in the future. But yeah, for today, it's just going to be about what exactly I'm planning to do and what I've been doing lately, I guess, while this last like 6 months or so that I haven't put up any videos. Let me see if I could put up another layer here real quick. Okay. So just to give you a quick rundown, right now I'm using Clip Studio Pro. I mentioned that in one of my other videos, and I'm starting to like this software more and more lately. It's just the way that the paint goes down, it just feels a lot more natural than Photoshop for me. And it's almost like now where I go back to Photoshop and it feels really odd and kind of unusual to me. I'm just so used to using this now. But let's see here if we could put like little bubbles or something. Let me go back and change that. But yeah, so the character I'm drawing, some of you may be able to recognize her. She's from an indie game called They Bleed Pixels. I did a let's play of it on my Japanese gaming channel, and it's just a game that I really liked, I really enjoyed, and I met the creator actually a couple years ago right before Tokyo Game Show, and he was a pretty cool guy. He has a lot of like interesting ideas about game design and whatnot, and I'm really interested to see what other stuff he comes up with in the future. But I really enjoyed the game, and I felt like I'd like to do a sort of illustrative tribute to it, so that's sort of why I started drawing this. And it's just sort of personal work that I'm doing on the side. It's not related to my work at all. So going into what I've been doing for the past six months or so, well, let's see. Well, there was Gen Con, and I told you I made Archetype is a board game, an original strategy fantasy board game that I designed for my company. I may go ahead and put a link in there eventually in the comment box below or something, but right now I'm just leaving it empty. And so we released that in Japan, and then we went to Gen Con in Indianapolis and released it over there as well. And it was fairly good. Like I say, we we sold more in Japan because I guess we just didn't really understand what it was going to be like going to Gen Con, because like Gen Con is like just huge compared to the little niche market of like board games that they have here in Japan. But we are registered again for next year, and we're going to be coming out to the States again next year in Gen Con and showing our game there again. Hopefully we'll have more than one game next time. Right now we only have one that's finished, but hopefully we'll have another one next time we go over there. And let's see, what else should I draw on here? I feel like the background's not quite the shade I want. Let's try to get a little darker down here. But yeah, so then Archetype is also, we're making a digital version of it. And you could check that out on our Facebook page. Just look for Archetype, ARCATYPE on Facebook, and you could find some details on that. But yeah, that's something we're working on right now, and been putting in a lot of hours on that. Basically, in terms of like what I do as in my job here as a game designer, well, I do a little bit of everything. We're still a pretty small company, so I think my boss wanted to hire people that are very dynamic. I don't know if that's quite the right word. I want to say malleable, or I was just able to do a lot of different things. So on the one hand, I'm doing a lot of illustrations. So for the board game, I did about like half of the illustrations. For the digital version, we had some other people come in, so there's other illustrations in there as well. But I still did a fairly sizable amount of the illustration work for the digital version as well. And that was a bit of a challenge in itself, because like it's kind of hard to imagine how much of a difference the kind of like way that people look at art is, like in Japan, in America, and outside like Asia, and like just different places kind of have different views on it. And I think for the most part in America, where I used to live, like we're generally pretty open to a lot of different styles, and there's a lot more diversity. While in Japan, it seems like this is particularly within the illustration industry or the gaming industry. This is true for manga and animation as well. But there's a sort of style that's already known to sell, and so it's kind of just assumed that you have to do that style, and there isn't a lot of like forgiveness for anything outside of that. And the other thing that I thought is kind of interesting is that maybe a lot of people might feel like, oh, I know what anime style is like, I know what manga style is like, and you may. I can't really say that you don't, but I'm just saying that for me personally, I thought I knew, and then I came here and I started doing work here, and the stuff that we pay attention to, or at least I was paying attention to, it was very different than the stuff that the people at my Japanese company would be paying attention to. Like for me, I think generally it's kind of like in the history of art outside of Japan, in like America and in the West, we tend to focus more on forms. Like even right now, like I'm drawing these bubbles. I didn't draw like a line. I didn't draw like some lines and stuff to figure out how to shade them, or like there's no line drawing here. It's just the forms and like putting shapes and stuff in there. While in Japan, it's more linear. They focus more on line art, and you'd be surprised at to what extent they would like nitpick about like very small lines. Maybe if your line's not quite thick enough at this point, or your line isn't smooth at this area, so like you're just thinking about like maybe and keep in mind when I'm saying you, I'm really speaking about myself, but like, so I'd be thinking about like this whole overall look, like how does this look all together? But they'd be more concerned with like does this, like for example here, like there's some, you can see in between these lines, they're not all like filled in properly, you know. Like here you have, I don't know if, can you see my mouse on here? I'm assuming you can. But you can see that this line doesn't perfectly fold into this line, you know. Stuff like that can be stuff that will come up like in meetings, like when you're having your stuff reviewed over here, and they just be like, yeah, your line work is too messy. Like look in here and you can see all this like these dots and stuff in here. And like for me, it's just like, well, when you look at the art full screen, and that's generally how I like to work, because, you know, what does it really matter if you could get like super great details into something this small that no one's going to look at? But when you look at it full screen, you're never going to notice any of that. But they still like pay attention to stuff like that, and so that took some getting used to. And then just the sort of the style differences too, because like for example, I don't really particularly, I kind of come from more of a not RPG, but like old like TSR, Dungeons and Dragons, like fantasy art background, and that's not always that's kind of like not looked as the main thing that you're looking for in Japan. In Japan, you want to do they have a different background. You have like the anime and the manga and things like that. So just having like a kind of different backgrounds and different visual vocabulary, it all took a lot of getting used to. But now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find a kind of vocabulary and the kind of visual style that's going to be uniquely mine. It's going to be taking parts of Japanese styles and parts of American styles and kind of trying to blend them together somehow. And that's not something I could do at work, because at work I really have to just do what they know is going to sell. So I do a lot of just trying to do the Japanese style as best as I can, and I'm not really trying to put a lot of my own individual like taste into it. But so that's why on the weekends I'm going to try to develop a portfolio that's more representative of what I want to do as an artist. And so this is like one piece within that series. And I'm not saying that this is really exactly what I want, but I'm trying to improve. I think I still need a lot of improvement. Another thing is that when you're working in a company, you only have about maybe a day or two to get your work done sometimes. So you can't really spend the extra time a lot, like pushing further and further. Like say, like this particular drawing, I redid her pose like maybe 4 or 5 times, and I'm probably still not completely satisfied with it how it is. But I just kind of want to get going and move on. So I wanted to finish this up. But like in the company, you don't have time to really do that. You have to get it done. So it's good to have that extra time outside of work where you can really focus on just trying to improve as much as you can. And if you're not completely satisfied with a pose or something, you can redraw it as much as you want. And there's not really that time sensitivity that you would have within your workplace. So I think that's really important to be able to work outside of your job. And going back to what I was talking about with the with what I actually do, I did do a lot of illustration for Archetype, but I also was the game designer for the game. So I was the one who drew up the initial idea and plan for the game, and that was another learning experience too. Like it's been a lot of like learning, a lot of like trials and errors, because let me see. Sorry, it's hard to talk and draw at the same time to think of what I want to do next with this. Think. Yeah, let's try to work on maybe some shading on her clothing. But yeah, so I came up with the original idea for the game and everything, but there was a lot of pushback there too, because I think even when in terms of gaming, I was really surprised that we have a lot of different like ideas about what would be good in a game. For example, especially like free to play stuff, like in general, when I talk to friends of mine outside of Japan, free to play, like pay to win, paywalls, these are all very negative concepts in people's minds, and it's stuff that you want to avoid. But in Japan, I was surprised. I talked to like young guys and stuff who are friends of mine, and they don't really seem to have that negative type of feel toward that. It's like, oh well, if people want to pay for stuff to be strong in a game, that's no problem. Like isn't like, that's just another way to play and stuff. And so it's like there's a kind of different idea about like gaming design and like what's okay and what's not okay. And so there was a lot of like pushing for things that I want to have in the game. Like I didn't want it to be pay to win. I didn't want it to have paywalls and things like that. And at first I had some pushback from like my boss and like people above me, which is kind of expected, because their goal is generally to make money. So if they think that this particular pay model is going to make them more money, then they're going to want to have that in the game. And I kind of expected that, but I would try to like justify things and say like, well, in general, the game's only kind of, the population of a game's player base, about 10% of that may be like really heavy cucking users. How do I say that in English? People who spend a lot of money on the free to play game. So in English, I think we call them the whales. They're the people who spend the most money on the games. That's only really like maybe, and I'm making this up. I'm making this percentage up, but it's a small percentage. So like let's just say like 10%, 5%, whatever. It's a small percentage of the overall player base. And so you can try to like suck as much money as you can out of every player, but then maybe your player base isn't going to be that high because not a lot of people are going to like that game then, you know, because it's like, oh, well, this game, I can't really play it because I don't have enough money. And like, if you don't have people playing, then people aren't going to like talk about it. There's going to be no word of mouth spread about the game or anything. So it's generally just not going to attract as wide of an audience. So maybe you'll get a lot of money out of the people that play it, but maybe you just won't have a lot of people playing, right? While the other approach would be to actually just make the game good and fun and make it like really easy to play for lots of people, so that you get a very large player base. And then out of that very large player base, maybe only 10% of the people that are playing are gonna spend a lot of money on it. But if you have a large enough player base, that 10% could be a huge number of people, you know. So, you know, I would talk about stuff like that and try to like get a little bit more of what I want into the game. That's strange. Why is that drawing over there? Okay, let me lock this there. All right. And so yeah, they had that sort of like a backlash and things. But what really surprised me is sometimes not only the people over me, but even like young guys who are working with me, like who I would assume would be completely on my side, would be like, oh no, we need to make sure that the game makes money, so we have to make sure that you can't progress past this point unless you use crystals or this or that. And it's like there's a lot of like difficulty with that, but I think I'm pretty happy with how the game's worked out now. It's more or less what I was looking for. It's a compromise of like my sensibilities and also like the sensibilities of like the Japanese audience and what they're looking for in games. So we added a lot of things that are very common with Japanese games here into the game. And all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. It was definitely a big learning experience. It was our company's first fully original game. So it was a lot of like figuring out a lot for a lot of us. Everything we were doing, it was the first time we were doing it. So we had to like really study and learn while we were making it, and I'm pretty happy with it. So it's not going to be in America for a little while longer. It's going to be coming out in Japan soon, but I don't know. Maybe I'll let you know if it comes to America in the not too distant future. But yeah, so that's basically what's been keeping me busy. I working many hours each day at work, and then coming home and generally just trying to recharge for the next day. But yeah, so I'd like to know any other topic ideas you have for other things you want me to talk about in the future. I do plan to talk about how I got into the gaming industry. I think that may be a topic pretty soon in like the next video or so. And I'm going to be doing this every week now, every Sunday. I'm thinking that the time I'm going to go for right now is I'm going to start around 4 o'clock here. Let me see. No, I think I'm going to start like 3 o'clock here. Yeah, I think I'm going to try to start around 3 o'clock here, which should be like 10 o'clock in Pacific Standard Time. So like 10 p.m. Saturday. But yeah, I may change that in the future, but for now, that's sort of what I'm thinking. And I'm pretty sure that there's not going to be a whole lot of people for the first couple months or so, like joining in live. But that's okay, because my main thing wasn't really about like I wanted to do a live thing. I mean, once we actually get enough people and people are here live, I'd love to like interact with people and see like have people chat and like ask me stuff while I'm actually here, and we could have like sort of like a Google Hangout type of thing going on. But my main goal is just to be able to get consistent content out, and the Google Hangout just seems like this YouTube live event, I guess is, I'm not sure which one it's called, but this just seems like a really good way to get that done, because you'd be surprised, even my old videos, like there really wasn't a whole lot to them, but still the amount of time that you'd have to spend like like formatting different files to be able to work in your video editing software, or like the time that you have to spend, like say like loading files from your camera, or taking video files, and then like sometimes maybe like there'd be maybe some like line or some like strange like encoding error that comes up, and you have no idea why, so you have to spend like another hour or so just like searching on Google trying to figure out how to fix that. And like, I mean, people, I don't do this full time, so people who do like full-time YouTube, I mean, I'm sure that you get used to it, and they can start punching stuff out pretty quick. But for me, I only have like for example, a lot of days I work maybe 10 to 12 hour work days, so then you get home and you have like two hours or so before you want to go to sleep, and it's like, do I really want to work on like editing the video, or like encoding stuff and doing all that stuff? And also, I'm a game designer, so I want to play games. I really like playing games, and I want to know all the games that are out there. I want to be able to add to my, like, just like as an artist, you need to add to our visual library. As a game designer, I also need to add to my design library. I have to know what type of systems, like, and when I say systems, I say what type of mechanics, what type of mechanics new games are using, how they're trying to like improve upon like the last generation, or how like what gamers are into now. And like that's all stuff that I have to kind of research too. And part of that research is actually playing games. So I like to have time to play some video games as well. So that's usually what I do when I have some time off. So yeah, so my main idea was that this would be a very simple way to be able to assuredly make content, because basically all I have to do, and this is really cool of like the way that the system seems to work, is that I basically just hit the play button, and it just starts recording while I'm drawing, which is something I would be doing anyways. Today I haven't drawn much. I apologize for that if you were actually looking to see the drawing evolve, because I'm still not quite used to talking and drawing at the same time, but hopefully I'll get better at that. But yeah, all you do is just hit the play button and it plays, and then it's going to record it live. For the beginning, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of people here live, but that's cool, because all you have to do is after we finish recording, it'll automatically put that to YouTube, and then people can watch it whenever they have time or whenever they feel like it. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that today. I'm going to try to work on this a little bit more, and then maybe you could see how it's developed next week. This is good for me too, because it kind of forces me to spend time on these drawings, and to make sure that I do put this time aside every weekend to do this, because when you're working and you, like I said, sometimes I do I also do the game design side of things, not just the illustrations. So there could be periods of time where I'm not doing any illustration at all. Like actually this month I haven't really done much illustration at all, because mostly I've just been like tweaking like the game balance, like changing how strong different characters are in different quests, and like what the end, like how strong the bosses are, or like playing through the game and making sure that there aren't any glitches or like bugs that stop you from progressing. So like when you get into that type of work for a while, sometimes it's hard to take time aside and actually make sure that you're still drawing and still working your artistic muscles and stuff. But yep, so that's pretty much all I have to say for today. Let me know if you have any ideas for what to call this. I don't know if we should call it like Japan Quest Reloaded, Japan Quest Revamped, Reborn. Maybe just drop the whole Japan Quest altogether and call it Super Happy Fun Time, Super Smile, Love and Peace, I Will Go to the Tomorrow. I'm pretty sure I saw a t-shirt that had that written on it in Japan. But yeah, so just let me know how an idea for the title. Let me know if you have any other topics to talk about in the future. I'm thinking next week is probably just gonna be how I became a game designer. That's probably gonna be the topic I'm thinking to do for next week. But if you have any ideas, feel free to leave them below. I'd also like to try to get to the manga workshops again in the future, but just right now it just seems like it's much easier to just do this sort of like live chat type hangout type of thing. So getting a camera out and like videotaping actual physical drawing on paper might be a little bit in the future still. But yeah, for now you could at least I'm gonna at least do my best to do this every weekend. And yeah, let me know anything else you have. Rate, comment, subscribe, and all that other cool stuff that people say at the end of their videos. Take care. Yoroshiku.